and gentlemen, we are here at the ECW Arena out back. This is the Pro Wrestling Archives. I'm here with Keebu, and we're here to talk a little bit about pro wrestling. I gotta ask you, Keebu, tell me how you broke into business.
Well, my story is a little different, actually. So, I've been traveling everywhere around the country to, try to kind of find a spot to find a wrestling school that was open, that was willing for me to train. But the problem was that the minute I would continue to keep chasing after these doors, they would close. For example, I go all the way out to Atlanta, Georgia to find a wrestling school. That gets shut down. I travel out to Allentown to get trained by... Yes, that got shut down as well. And I tried to go to North Carolina, that got shut down as well. So each and every single time that I would try to, chase after a door that wouldn't open, it would just shut down. So I'm like, there was really nothing I could do at that point but just maximize my craft. So I can't get to a wrestling school at that point, coming fresh out of high school. But what I can do, since I didn't have a car, I had college that was down the street. So I was gonna work, build up my money, so take a part-time job and go to school full-time. So that way, when the refund check came in, I had enough to save up to go get a car. Once I was able to go get a car, okay, while I'm working to find another wrestling school, I'm gonna continue to keep training. So I took weight training, I took basketball, but I also took every theater class that Corning Community College had to offer. So I'm still building and perfecting my craft.
That's cool.
Even though there wasn't a wrestling school there, you see what I'm saying? So it was really just working with the best of what I have, out of just basically making the best out of a bad situation.
You know what that reminds me of? So you know Leon, the old 90s actor?
Yes.
The Mother Rim, Temptations movie, shit like that. He said that in his career, he had to accept things that were for him and to accept the things that were not for him.
I like that.
And when I heard that, I said, man, it sums up my career.
That's powerful. That's powerful.
Yeah. So, cool.
But going back to my point,
yeah.
It was just basically just sowing seed and just doing good and being faithful where I'm at with the little, and then eventually, I heard some preacher saying, God will bless you with a lot. You just got to be faithful in the middle. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna keep doing that. And the minute I started doing that, that's when the doors started opening and people started messaging me, and wrestling doors started coming to me, like people
to the next level thing.
Exactly. So people would message me like, hey, we got a wrestling school out here in Sayre, Pennsylvania. Hey, Keebu, we got a wrestling tryout here in Rochester. Hey, we got an opportunity here out in Campo. So I couldn't turn it down. And then
region, man.
Yeah.
Like so I'm a musician.
Oh, really?
And then by jumping into the pro wrestling world, because I loved it since I was a kid, it's allowed me to see a regional thing that's their music and wrestling, but it's different than this whole thing is so crazy to me.
It's similar, but it's so different.
Right, and different states. PA and New York are totally different, but at the same time, it's the same circuit kind of thing. It's crazy, this whole thing. But it's good to be on the road. So I gotta ask you, who were some of your favorite guys?
Obviously the Hardy Boys. And the reason why it was the Hardys is because they stood out and they were different, and it kind of caught my eye. Like on the surface level, it was the entrance music, it was the attire, it was the moveset, it was the look. Like,
when were you born?
1996.
Okay.
And I remember very, very specifically, my mother was pregnant and I was 3 years old. And
you were born 96?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, man. So I was born 96.
What month?
January.
Okay.
So I ended up.
Pac died.
Yup. Right before.
That summer, he just set the country on fire.
I believe that.
It was crazy. I remember when he died and all that, and then so 96.
Yes.
That to me, that was kind of not the end of the world, but the end of hip hop.
It was the end of an era.
Yeah, end of the era of the West Coast hip hop.
Wow.
And then.
So remember Biggie died.
Yeah, and then when that happened, ECW ran. Barely Legal was right after that. So the whole thing it's intertwined in some weird way, because Heyman's whole business model was built off of gangster rap.
Wow.
So yeah, it's crazy, man. The whole thing is so crazy.
It's funny though how hip hop influenced pro wrestling. When you really think about it from that aspect, it's like
and vice versa. They were fucking with Flair and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like these hip hop cats were like, I love Ric Flair and like
they
shit.
They had Ric Flair in the music video when they did WWE 2K19.
Yeah, right. And he was in some other video in 2000.
Ric Flair drip or something like that.
He's been all up in that. It's crazy, man. But So, like, what about like Memphis? Like, you fucking Memphis like that?
I've never been to Memphis at all. Never.
Have you checked out any wrestling shit?
I was supposed to go to Memphis a couple months ago, but it got canceled.
You didn't watch any old VHS or DVDs or anything?
Probably when I was a kid, man. It was
Check
just
out that USWA shit. It's awful.
Definitely.
Fucking All the Nation. You know, Nation Domination started there and then went to WWF and then like King Reginald and shit. There's all these guys, dude. Memphis wrestling's crazy.
Yeah, I remember specifically. I was like 6 or 7 years old. I used to go to my aunt's house all the time, and she would literally have like a set of VHS cassette tapes, and they were all wrestling. Nice. So everybody else would be, downstairs and smoking cigarettes or doing whatever, and then I'd be upstairs, just watching for hours. Yeah, playing with my cousin's toys because he had wrestlers too. Yeah. And I would just sit up there for hours, and people would literally look at me. Even my uncle came to me one day. He was like, "I thought there was something."
How old were you then? Like 3 or 4?
I was about 6 or 7.
6 or 7.
But
that's what happens, man.
Yeah, and it's weird how it all happened because like it didn't just happen overnight. It was one of those that slowly but gradually happened.
Right.
And I remember the one match that really sticks with me is I didn't really get hooked into it until I watched the Terry Invitational Tournament, if people remember that. Hardy Boys versus Edge and Christian in the ladder match for $100,000. No, it was for $100,000 in Terry's managerial services.
Yeah, Terry Reynolds.
That match really set the tone.
I remember that.
For the TLC matches, for the table match in Madison Square Garden, for TLC 2, for eventually Matt and Jeff to go their separate ways and have their own established singles careers. Like without that match,
Dudleys and them were getting over.
The Dudleys were in the mix as well.
Yeah,
like
crazy.
right a few minutes before that. Yeah, that match really definitely resonates with me. But the one match I would say in particular, if you had to ask me what my favorite match of all time is Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. There is no other match that compares to that in pro wrestling history. The reason why I say that is because that to me is what pro wrestling is defined by. That is a perfect wrestling match. And what I mean by that is...
I gotta go back and check that one out.
Oh yeah, and what I mean by that is that match to me is the complete package because I'm looking at the storytelling. I'm looking at the video package. I'm looking at the entrances. I'm looking at how they start up. I'm looking at how they tie up. I'm looking at false finishes. I'm looking at near falls. I'm looking at
just comeback too, right?
Exactly, and then I'm also looking at the finish. That was the best finish I've ever seen to a pro wrestling match.
People say what they want about Michaels, but I mean, at the end of the day, everybody agrees that he makes that shit look better than anybody.
I agree so, and I'm a big
Kurt Hennig. I might have to give it to Kurt Hennig, but
to me, if you ask me who the greatest is, because there's a difference between who your favorite is, because that's kind of biased, but then who the greatest of all time is. If you ask me, I say Shawn Michaels is the greatest of all time because you look at his body of work. When it comes to the embodiment of a pro wrestler, he literally checks the list off of everything that you want in a pro wrestler.
Yeah, I think with him, the question is how he got there,
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know, because Brett and that, I mean, like from like 92 to 96, 7, Brett was on like a Michael Jordan run.
I agree.
And it's like a workhorse going around, traveling, doing it right. It's almost like being in a band.
Yeah.
Bret Hart was like the house band and was killing it. So it's like, but there's so many guys before them. Like there's so many guys, like 70s, 80s, 90s. It's like I can't put it on just one, but like I like when I talk about greatest of all time. Like I'm one of those guys that think like hip hop from the 80s and 90s is like the greatest music of all time. Even though I play all kinds of music, it's hard to pinpoint it and say that's the greatest. Like that one particular.
Because there's no criteria. Like when people say who's the greatest wrestler, what is the greatest match, or who is the best tag team,
right?
Under what criteria makes it the best? It's all subjective. Again, the same thing. It's all personal opinion.
But some people know. See, that's the thing. Some people know what a great wrestling match is, at least what it's defined as,
or what it's supposed to be.
What it's supposed to be. I think that's the key to all this is doing what you know is supposed to happen, but just doing it.
I guess it also depends on what area you grew up in, because if I would have been born 10 years earlier, my opinion would probably be a little completely different. Yeah. I probably would have said maybe Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart in the Iron Man match, or there's so many other different factors. Because look at the time, look at what year I grew up. Exactly, I could have said Hogan Warrior. I could have said Hogan Andre. If I was born in the 70s, I probably would have said Bruno Sammartino.
Right.
It really all depends on when you grew up at.
Right. It really does. And so you're born 96, I was born 84. The time period that for me was best was 84, 96. Not just with wrestling, but with mainstream pop culture, because the underground was on top. And Hollywood was driving, CDs were driving, you know?